You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hello and welcome to the Coming of Cage podcast. I am your host, Derek. I've got my buddy Ryan with me.
Hello.
Hello. And this week we are talking the 2014 film Rage, starring, of course, Nicolas Cage, along with Peter Stormare and Danny Glover. Sort of.
Yeah.
They're in it. They're not, I wouldn't say that they star, but they're in it. They're the next big names. So, Ryan, you've been really good as we do this show, taking notes for the films that we watch. And I think that we should just stick with that format. It's working for me.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to say right up front that tonight we're recording this on a Tuesday night. I watched it Saturday night, and I'm looking at these notes and trying to remember what any of this means. So I feel like this movie may not be that memorable. Like, just in general, it was a very generic movie. It's definitely taking inspiration from other things that have been done, other movies that were similar themed and more successful. But I'm going to request that humbly that Derek, who just watched it last night, tries to guide us through whatever my notes mean.
I'll do my best, man. But I think you're right. I think this is definitely the most forgettable of this is our 7th episode. So of the 7 films we've watched, this is the most forgettable.
Yeah, probably. The other episodes all had like at least some sort of standout moments that I could remember. But this one, not as much.
Well, let's do it. What do you got? What's your first note?
My first note is weird opening.
Just weird opening.
That's all it says, yeah.
Oh, because he's picking his daughter up at the school?
No, I think that I think this means like an even earlier opening where like it's like a zoom in on his eye.
Oh, right. I actually had kind of forgotten about that.
Yeah.
That was
and
weird.
It shows up later. Like they're trying to be clever and tie it into the movie later, but it's just a really weird way to open the movie.
They tried to do some clever cinematography at times, and boy, do I think it didn't work.
Yeah, they took some chances that didn't pay off.
No, but it's clearly like they shot this in a more sophisticated way than, say, Inconceivable, which we talked about on episode 4. But at least Inconceivable kept it simple. You know, this one tried too hard from a cinematography standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. I had to look up what year John Wick came out, and I need to look up what year Taken came out because I feel like
Taken.
Oh man, there's a lot of inspiration. Okay, so Taken was 2008.
Yeah.
And the original John Wick was 2014, which is the same year this came out. So they didn't steal any ideas from John Wick because it came out same year, but they definitely took a lot of ideas from Taken.
It wanted to be Taken so badly.
Yeah, and I think that some of the things like weren't, I don't even remember, but when I was watching it, I was like, that this isn't that bad. Like they might have something here. I think some of the action scenes actually seemed like John Wick in the sense that they had similar ideas. They just had much poorer execution. So I feel like some things, you know, they did right or they had the right idea. They just, you know, there was no great blueprint other than Taken.
Right. And I apologize. We kind of glossed over what the movie is. So for those who don't know, if you didn't watch this ahead of time, the movie, according to IMDb, when the daughter of a reformed criminal is kidnapped, he rounds up his old crew and seeks his own brand of justice. And Nicolas Cage plays Paul Maguire, who is this ex-hitman type person. So that's the premise of the show. So when we're saying Taken, his daughter is kidnapped fairly early on in the film on a night where he and his wife are out at dinner with the governor or somebody.
Like yeah, she leaves them. They leave their daughter at home with these 2 teenage boys.
Yes, which was an interesting decision. You know, Dad. I didn't really know where to take this Nic Cage character, Paul Maguire. He kind of was all over.
He wasn't that fleshed out. Yeah,
yeah.
Like they had a bunch of ideas for him, and it didn't. They didn't really seal anything in.
there's very little room for character development in this film, which I mean, it is a short movie. It's only an hour and a half, but because of that, there's hardly any character development.
That's true.
It's just a thing happens, a thing happens, a thing happens.
My second note is Milk Brothers question mark.
Dude, that one was weird too. Yeah.
That was super weird. Like, I've heard another term for that. That's probably, I think these days and maybe forever considered more offensive. I don't really,
it's definitely like, yeah, the term you're thinking of is certainly a more offensive term. So we're not going to say it here, but I had never heard the Milk Brothers one at all.
It just made me go, ew.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a very gross way of saying that two men have had sex with the same woman, essentially.
Yeah. But Kane seemed excited about it.
Yeah.
Which was weird. He's a strange character.
Yeah. Yeah. Just through the whole movie. I don't really know what they were going for with him. My next note says much younger wife, comma, again.
Yeah, I mean, that's an industry problem across the board, right? That we see all the time. Nic Cage he was born in 1964. Rachel Nichols, who plays his wife, she was born in 1980. So 16 years younger than Nicolas
She looks
Cage.
younger than that, even though, I mean, she's a very young looking actress, in my opinion.
Well, and this
I
was
put her in
also
her 20s.
This was 8 years ago too. You have to, remembering that. So she was only 34.
Yeah.
In the role, which is younger than both of us are now.
That's true.
But yeah, that's definitely an industry problem, and it seems to be consistent with Cage's films.
It does, yeah.
Most of the time.
There's a specific type of filmmaker that that wants Cage for their movies, and they have a specific thought for the wife too. My next note is he's very heavy-handed about work. Like, for the first 20 or 30 minutes of the episode, he just, like, every time he talks to, like, the teenager, he brings up that he's a working man, and, like, there's just a lot of mention of work and doing the work and working man and things like that. And it doesn't really pay off at any point.
Well, I don't know that is something I agree with. I think it really is. It's showing he trying everything he possibly can to distance himself from his past. Right. Because he knows what he did. We don't know what he did yet. He knows what he did, and he doesn't want that anymore. And he's just trying really hard to just get past that.
Yeah.
That's what I took away.
So my next note is Guitar Hero controller with no buttons.
I didn't even notice that.
I think in the house, one of the teenagers is playing, like, Guitar Hero, and the other two are, like, canoodling on the couch. And it looked to me like he was playing just a guitar.
That's pretty funny.
With no buttons, but it was like, and you could say, hey, Ryan, what about Rock Band or whatever that other one is? But he was clearly playing Guitar Hero. So,
I mean, I'm definitely no expert for those controllers. I only had it for Wii, Guitar Hero 3, and those buttons were really obvious, but I know
they were really obvious on Xbox also. So I had it for that. Yeah. So
yeah.
Anyway, that was just kind of a fun
that.
one. We're both gamers, so yeah. I thought that was funny. I'm surprised you didn't catch that.
No, I didn't.
So my next note is action scene camera work is bad, and this is specific. Not all the action scenes were done this way, but there's, like, this one flashback action scene that they reference, like, 10 times in the movie about the main character and two of his buddies, like, stealing a car or stealing something and killing a person. It's really kind of, even till, like, the end of the movie, I still didn't really understand what had happened in that scene, because it's kind of weird. They burned something with a gun in it.
So they were stealing money from the Russian mob. Okay.
Right.
And in the process, they killed the guys who were involved in that and burned their bodies in the car.
Gotcha. And one of them was the brother of some other mobster.
Of Chernov. So Chernov is the leader of the Russian mob in the, quote, present day of the film. And we find out towards the end of the movie, when he's torturing Danny, that the guy they killed was his brother.
Right.
Fun fact, the guy who plays Chernov was just in Stranger Things. Briefly. In season 4, he's in the Russian prison. Excuse me. He's one of the guys that, they eat together and everything. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil anything for Stranger Things, but he's there. So it's just funny because I've seen him in a few different things, but it's been a long time. And then I see him like twice in the same week. It was just kind of funny.
My next note is he's being a huge dick to this kid. I don't remember what kid this was at this point.
Oh, so I'm assuming this was after the kidnapping happened. So when they're at
yeah. That's what it was.
Because he does talk to the kid. And I'm drawing a blank on the kid's name, Mike, I think.
One of the kids that was there when the daughter got kidnapped and got the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah. So there's a guy who apparently likes his daughter, Caitlin, right? Is the daughter's name?
This is the same guy that he offered a job to earlier
Yes.
because he's a working man.
He's a working man and he knows that he's into his daughter and all that. So they have that conversation before the dinner. They come back from the dinner. The boys they got the crap beat out of them, right? There's broken glass. The daughter's gone. And he goes and talks to Mike and is trying to get information, this is where the movie to me got really uncomfortable because not only is he kind of being overly aggressive with a supposedly innocent teenager, but it gets real racist really quick.
The whole movie.
I
have a couple of other notes on here that deal with that.
But this is where it really starts. And he's making really offensive comments about what the people may have looked like or smelled like. And it just made me extremely uncomfortable really fast. And the kid has no information for him. And McGuire even tells the kid that he should have been willing to be shot
and die
trying to save his daughter.
Because men protect women. Or
right. It's very
toxic masculinity.
Yeah, that gets rolled in there too. This conversation changed for me the whole tone of the film.
And this was 2014. This wasn't like a 1993 movie. This is 2014, so it's not that old. It's less than 10 years old.
No, this is what I would still consider to be a modern film.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
So my next note actually deals with the first after your previous point of major kind of racist undertones. This scene is very uncomfortable when his two friends go into this place and there's a young black man and a woman and they just start they talk about how this kid is a rat and everything else, and they are just bullying the shit out of this guy and threatening to kill his girlfriend and everything. And it's two middle-aged white guys bullying the shit out of this black kid. And it was super uncomfortable. I mean, granted, in 2014, some of the things that have happened modern day or in the past few years have made something like this even more uncomfortable. But this wasn't a comfortable thing even in 2014, I can imagine.
No, I'm with you there. And so it's just for some context. So McGuire's character's got two best friends, Kane and Danny, and the three of them used to, work together when they were in crime, and they were the three who did who killed Chernov's brother back in the day and all this other stuff. And so they think, obviously it's the Russians or somebody else is coming after McGuire, and that's why they kidnapped his daughter. And so Danny and Kane just go out basically as enforcers to try and, find out what's going on, who took Caitlin. And the guy is supposedly a rat who would give information. Kid doesn't have any information. And at the same time, they almost kill this woman. Right. He ties her up.
Try and get him to break.
To try and get him to break. He ties her to a rope and a cinder block, and he chucks the cinder block out the window, and she gets thrown back into the wall, right below the window. And, he ends up shooting the rope so the cinder block falls and she doesn't choke to death. But then he makes some joking comment. That was Kane. Kane makes a joking comment then to Danny about how he's surprised he even hit the rope, and his plan was just for the cinder block to throw her out the window. He was totally cool murdering this woman who he knows nothing about, who for all we know has never, really done anything other than, obviously she's done some drugs, but other than that, we don't know that she's ever done anything else wrong. And Kane's joking about how, oops, I accidentally didn't kill her. It was just bad. The movie just, those two scenes really took the movie in a very different direction for me.
Well, and then the next scene too, because if you've seen Taken, the whole goal is to get the daughter back through the whole movie. But in this movie, she's straight up fucking dead, like 30 minutes into the movie.
Pretty early. Yeah.
And it's out of nowhere.
It's out of nowhere. They find her like in a creek or, or something like that. And some runner finds her, which is a second time some random running person has found a dead body in a Nic Cage movie we've talked about.
So far.
And then, McGuire sees her in the morgue, they have that whole thing, which felt more awkward to me than sad.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I missed it. We find out later in the movie that she was shot by this Russian gun, right? But I feel like that's not explained until much later. So I didn't know for a while how she died.
They didn't get ballistics off the gun, so they didn't, you know what I mean? I guess they could have said she was shot, but the important reveal was that the ballistics of the gun related to this Russian firearm.
Mm-hmm.
So then Peter Stormare's character shows up,
right.
and he's in a wheelchair. And at this point, I threw my bet in. As soon as he showed up, I didn't even need to say a word, that he's the guy that was behind the whole thing.
I wouldn't have been surprised.
Instantly suspicious was my note, because that would have made for a better movie. When we get to the end, we can talk about the way I thought that was going to work out.
Yeah.
Because it ended with a much worse, much worse.
Horrible ending.
Like really, possibly the worst ending they could have done. But yeah, that instantly, as soon as I saw them talking, and as soon as they started talking, I was like, okay, yeah, he's definitely behind all of this.
Yeah, and it's at the funeral.
Yeah,
where they meet, and there are some good tension moments in these scenes between McGuire and Francis O'Connell, Peter Stormare's character. Where they're having this back and forth, and O'Connell's trying to explain, like, to leave it alone, don't let this destroy you, kind of thing. And it's delivered really well. I mean, I really like Peter Stormare, so like I think he did as good as he could do in this movie.
So let me ask you this, because my next note has to do with his particular choices in this movie, or maybe choices that were made for him. What nationality is Peter Stormare? Like, where's he from?
Yeah, that was unclear to me.
No, not his character, him.
Where is he from? I don't know. Let me check real quick. I really
Somewhere not in America. He's from Sweden.
He's from Sweden.
They made him do this god-awful American accent because they wanted to differentiate, like, that he's not Russian. And American listeners aren't great at discerning accents a lot of the time. I'm guessing this is why they did this.
Well, and he's played a Russian before, like, for example, Armageddon.
Several times. Yeah, several times. So I was expecting him to be Russian in this movie, but then I started hearing him talk, and he just has a really bad American accent in this movie. It's just not believable at all, and sometimes, like, his natural accents, like, slips in there. And just real bad. Was it that way for you too?
I didn't realize it was trying to be an American accent. That's why when you asked the question, was that?
Yeah, you couldn't pinpoint it because it was so bad. I mean, I think it was trying to be American. I guess I don't really have any proof of that, but because like it's not good.
Well, because it's weird because you've got like there's two factions. One of them is defined the entire time as the Russians.
Right. Easy to distinguish because we all know what a Russian accent sounds like.
But they're always referred to as the Russians the entire time, right? Versus this other group, they're just the guys they used to work for. And so we don't
we don't know where they're from. But I mean, I feel like they were trying to do an American accent because all the guys that Nic Cage works with are all very American accents. Yeah.
That's fair. I didn't even really put too much thought into it.
WTF accent is what the note says. I
mean, that part's certainly fair.
My next note is car blowing up, most expensive scene in the movie. Which I think I don't even remember what kind of car it was. But I will say, this is a 2014 movie, all right? And we're both kind of car guys. Like, we like cars. Did you notice that, like, every single car they had in the movie was, like, other than the Mustang that he drove, was, like, a super cheap, like, 1994 Dodge Caravan or something? It was like, all... the police cars were, like, all from the 90s because all they could afford was, like, really, really low-end cars.
Well, there's some inconsistencies for sure. So the car you're talking about was from the flashback from the crime that they committed when they were
Oh, is that
teenagers.
what it was?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it was like a Lincoln, I think, that they blow up. It was like one of those like beigeish dull yellow
Yeah.
Lincolns, right? That's the one that they blow up. Now the two mob bosses, Chernov and Francis, they have like Escalades or something like that. Those
It's not
big,
Escalade.
well, it's like the big oversized SUVs that, were
Right.
cool in like
Well, it might have been an
2004.
Escalade, actually.
It may not have been literally an Escalade, but that was the vibe that they were
Yeah.
going for, right? Could have been a Lincoln. I don't know.
But all the
But
cars that were like around them on the
everything
streets and
else.
everything was all super cheap cars.
Yeah.
Any car that like was in any danger of being hit by something
It was all
was a
crap.
cheap car. Yeah. It was just
Except,
so
yeah.
funny to me because
Except
usually
for
it's
the
not that
Mustang.
obvious.
The Mustang, of course.
And it did get beat up
It
throughout
did.
the movie.
It did inconsistently, I might add. It would go from pretty beat up to less beat up depending.
And my significant other noticed, and maybe I didn't pick up on it, so maybe she was confused or something, but the interior of the Mustang changed, according to her. She said it in the early scenes it was like a cream color, the interior was, and then later in the movie, she said, that's not the same car. And I said, yeah, that's the same car. It's the same Mustang. And she said, no, the interior was a different color. So I don't know. I'd have to go rewatch it.
He did change cars. Because in the beginning of the movie, he's driving, well, there's a mistake. The car that he picks his daughter up in is not the car they show them driving in the next shot. It changes to an Infiniti from something else, like a Cadillac or something like that. And so there's already a problem there. But then he switches to the Mustang later after the cops are involved.
Maybe that's where the confusion was.
And he decides to go off on his own. So there might have been a situation where she was remembering the other
Infiniti
car, possibly.
Yeah. Potentially, yeah, but it's
know,
just a weird inconsistencies.
It was. I feel like for the Mustang, they were trying to go with a Gone in 60 Seconds vibe. It didn't work, but I feel like that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just put Nic Cage in a Mustang and be like, oh, Gone in 60 Seconds, guys.
Well, it was also like a grayish, Mustang with the black stripes.
But the one in Gone in 60 Seconds isn't just a Mustang.
No, it's
a very specific, very rare, very expensive Mustang. So,
but they couldn't
insulting.
Afford it, so.
Yeah, it's almost insulting that they would, and maybe they didn't do it for that. I don't know, but I definitely got a similar vibe. My next note leads into the racist stuff again, but this is actually a line from Danny Glover. He brings up that a white criminal can go straight, but a black cop can't refinance his house.
Yeah. So I felt like that was the movie's like lone attempt to try and say something real for 5 seconds, but it's so lost in the rest of this mediocre mob flick that I'm surprised it caught your attention, frankly.
Oh, yeah?
Because it's such a fleeting line. And Danny Glover's character, we haven't talked about him yet, makes such little sense in this movie. So he plays a detective.
And he's not good.
He's the worst detective I can remember.
Not just bad detective, but Danny Glover is not good in this.
I mean, I think he knew the role, right? I think he knew that this didn't make any sense. Like he wasn't a bad detective in the sense that like he was a dirty cop. He was bad at his job.
Yeah.
Right. He knows what McGuire used to do. And he keeps giving him chances to do crime again. So much so that in the big car chase scene where he supposedly wrecks the Mustang and then can drive away in it, which by the way is one of the worst shot chase scenes I've ever
really
watched.
Bad, yeah.
He's being arrested by like a dozen cops, and the detective Danny Glover is like, nah, let him go. It's fine. What do you mean it's fine?
Yeah. He's not great as an actor in this movie. I think this may be the newest movie that I've seen him in. He doesn't do a lot of acting these days. And I think I'm starting to see why. Like he didn't really do anything except kind of slowly walk around.
I mean, he's done a lot since 2014.
Has he? Well, maybe it's just not stuff I've seen.
It's not stuff you and I would normally watch. I'm not seeing anything that jumps out that's like, oh yeah, that. But he's been in a lot of projects.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, in this movie, he basically was just like, I don't know, there's a term that we used a lot on the last podcast where you're giving a lot of information about the movie in the
Yeah.
sense of the movie. What's the term?
Well, it's exposition.
Exposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was basically just a lot of exposition about the other characters, and he would just like wander around like very slowly and give exposition. And that was his entire character.
Well,
And the
he was also
acting,
there. He did play one very important role. He answered the question, how are cops not stopping McGuire?
yeah, I guess. But with all the other things they don't cover in the movie, I feel like they can get away with not having to cover that.
He
And
gets
especially
caught.
not with Danny Glover.
God, he gets caught like 3 times and nobody cares.
Right.
Well, that's not fair. Most of the cops care. Danny Glover doesn't care.
And he must be super freaking important, like the chief of police, because
He's not. He's just a detective.
well, I mean, he's got more power than the chief of police then because he's just letting this like career criminal go.
And I did think they were going to go somewhere because like when they find the ballistics, Danny Glover's character tells him to keep it quiet, like don't tell anybody about it. And then immediately McGuire finds out. So in my head, I'm like, okay, we're going to find out about like some type of leak, right? Some type of rat who's in the police or whatever. And that's going to tie into the story somehow. No, that goes nowhere.
Well, they did mention that one of his friends has a connection in the police department.
Yeah, but like we never learn who that is or their relationship to the detective. It just kind of fades away.
Yeah, because it's not that important to the story in the greater scheme of things.
No, it's not. I just thought it might become important, and it didn't.
My next note is choreography is bad.
Yeah.
Thinking back on this, I didn't actually think about it when I was watching the movie, but now that we're talking about it and thinking about it, it's very, very difficult for me to believe that John Wick, the first John Wick, came out this same year, because that's a masterclass in action filmmaking. And this movie is like a high school, like intro to videography class, essentially. Like the movies are so far apart.
It's a fair comparison for a lot of reasons too, because they're even the same class of film from a budget perspective. John Wick got 20 million. This movie got 15. So it's not like we're comparing, apples to oranges here. I think it's a really good point, and it shows that having like awards for stunt people and choreography people and things like that is important because it can make or break the movie.
Yeah, it's the difference between having people that really know what they're doing in a movie and people that don't seem to really know what they're doing. And maybe this was just a bad movie for a lot of the people that were involved. I mean, producers and director and all that stuff. Or maybe they just, I don't know. But I would not go see a movie knowingly based off this director, again, having seen this. And my next note has to do with John Wick also, because they go into like this club. And again, in the first John Wick movie in 2014, the same year this came out, there's a very, I don't know if I'm going to say famous, but like one of the iconic scenes of the movie is him like going through this club, trying to get after this person that he's chasing. And he's just, destroying people with wonderful choreography, fun gunplay, stuff like that. This movie has a club scene, and it even has like the pink and purple lights like the John Wick one, but it's like so much worse. And, it doesn't really amount to anything.
It doesn't, but it's followed by an even more ridiculous scene, which is the Russian dude runs away, gets shot through like the lower back and stomach by Kane. And then he and McGuire have a foot chase that seemingly goes on forever.
My next note is dude's literally dying and Nick still can't catch him.
Not even close. He's losing ground on this dude who bleeds out 2 minutes later, which either says a lot for this poor Russian dude. I mean, he must have been like an Olympic athlete at some point in his life, or it says something even worse about McGuire, but it went on forever.
Yeah. And then when he finally catches him, the guy's basically dead. And he's like, he yells at the guy, "Don't die," like 100 times, and then immediately starts smashing his head into the ground
over and over and over.
So my note says, "Don't die," but here's blunt head trauma.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just bad, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. My next note is, why is Danny Glover so bad in this?
He is the worst detective I've ever seen in a film.
Like, he could have just played Murtaugh. And it would
No,
have been
because he would have been
fine.
better at his job.
That's true. But
Right?
he did seem like in this movie that he was getting too old for this shit.
He absolutely did, but he just was so incompetent. He was actively helping Maguire commit felonies throughout the course of this film. And he's just like, just don't do it again, man.
Yeah.
Okay. And then immediately goes and does something else. Like it was awful. It was complete. It was so unbelievable that would happen.
Yeah. It was weird.
Like, because that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not a dirty cop. It's not like Maguire's paying him off or something like that. Because at least then there's a logical reason for the guy to act that way, right? Well,
Right.
I'm going to let him off the hook because he just gave me 40 G's, right? I get it. You're a bad person, but at least you're not like a moron, right? Like, he's just so bad at his job. It was
He's
very
real bad.
unbelievable.
My next note is slow motion gun scene, which I don't remember specifically what that was. But then the note after that is more slow-mo guns.
Was that
It's
when
just-
they go into the crack house?
Probably, yeah. I mean, there was just a lot of like at one point just guns shooting in slow motion, and
Yeah, that was the
like,
crack house.
It was very weird, like out of nowhere, just a ton of slow motion. No other slow motion in this movie except for like this one scene and then one at the very end.
It felt to me like they were trying to do Bad Boys.
Yeah,
in the crack house, especially
definitely
because
some inspiration.
there's a moment later in that same kind of sequence where Maguire's upstairs and there's a wall between him and two other guys. And in Bad Boys, there's two of them, right? There's Martin Lawrence and there's Will Smith. And so they each take one side. But in this case, it's just Nic Cage. So he's got to do it all by himself. And it's basically the same scene. It's just him by himself done really poorly by comparison.
Right.
And yeah, so like they were really just trying to recapture Bad Boys 2, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah, and probably this next note ties into that too. Infinite ammo hack on shotgun. Because I don't even remember which character it was, but there was this one
Maguire.
shotgun. Was it Maguire?
Yeah.
This shotgun just it seemingly had 15 shots in it and never got reloaded.
I mean, he had to cock it.
He did, because people in this movie did not seem to understand how shotguns work or why you would cock it like well before you got into a gunfight instead of at the beginning of it. But yeah, it was just a lot of shots. And this is another thing that a lot of people love about John Wick, which again came out same year as this movie, is that they make it a point. The reloading is a part of the action sequence, right? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes he's out of bullets and he has to react to what it's like to being out of bullets and then get the gun reloaded or take somebody else's gun. And that is a huge part of why the action worked in those movies. And so when you have a movie like this where the ammo is just infinite and they very rarely, they did show a few reloads in this, but it wasn't like tactical reloads. It was like they just are hanging out behind a brick wall and have 10 minutes to reload their gun. It wasn't used. I don't know. Again, this comes back to how much of a masterclass John Wick was versus a movie like this.
And maybe it's just unfortunate timing for Rage that it happened to release in the same year as like one of, if not the greatest like gunplay franchises,
just straight out action movies of the last decade.
It's phenomenal, right? But like the gunplay specifically, like people go because those scenes are done so well that they're enjoyable on their own,
right?
Absent of the plot, and then that just gets added on top of it. Versus in this, the action sequences are actually a detriment to an already bad plot.
Right. They just make it worse.
Right.
Usually you look forward to the next cool action sequence, but in this movie, you're not sure if you're going to have a seizure when you're watching the next bad action sequence because of the shaky cam.
Mm-hmm.
And usually shaky cam, like they don't go over the top with it. They like, it's natural amount of shakes when somebody is running and holding a camera, but in this movie, it's like they had somebody that couldn't control their hands shaking, like they were hypoglycemic or something, and their hands were just shaking so bad that you weren't sure what was going on because there was so much shaking happening.
Well, a lot was bad editing too. Like in that car chase scene, the edits, there's so many cuts to different camera angles so fast, so often that like I was like, it was hard to watch the scene. I wanted it to be over.
Because on our last podcast, I talked about action scenes a lot, that like heavy cuts, lots of cutting in any kind of action scene, but especially choreography is something that really, really bothers me. And maybe you guys now that bothers you a lot too.
I
But
mean,
the car chases, you can't have a lot of cuts like that anyway because it
yeah.
starts to be disorienting.
And that's what
So
happened here.
yeah,
It was literally like making me feel like I was getting a headache watching the car chase scene. And
right.
like, come on, car chase scenes have been in movies forever, and if Fast and the Furious can make an entire franchise based off of car chase scenes, you can give me one car chase scene in your movie if you're going to put it in there. That doesn't give me a headache.
Yeah, it was not great.
you know?
Then my next note, I think, was a line from Danny Glover, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on that, where he says it's a rap sheet as long as his dick.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we don't know how long his dick is. So that doesn't really land, right? Like we either assume that he has a really huge penis and that this rap sheet is really long, or like it's just not that big and the rap sheet is like an average length.
So it was Danny Glover's character who said it. And maybe, this movie is fairly racist. Maybe they were leaning into the stereotype.
Oh God. Yeah. I mean, maybe, but
I don't know. But I remember that line for sure.
Yes, because it
like,
stood out so much. You had to think that maybe Danny Glover was like in his trailer practicing this one line because it was like the only line that was any fun for his character in the entire movie. But you also would have thought that he would go, man, this line is not great. It's just really not a good line. But yes, it stood out, probably not for the right reasons.
I mean, I guess I don't know what a rap sheet looks like. So, maybe even if you're average size, that's still a lot of pages of paper,
is
right?
It like a CVS receipt? Or like, are they talking about like the depth, like a stack, or are they talking about sheets like back to back?
See, I was thinking like thickness of like a packet of paper.
I was thinking about like those old like printers with like the holes where it just keeps printing out,
the dot matrix
printer. Yeah. So, which would make it not really that big of a rap sheet probably.
No, you're right. See, we've got two very different pictures.
But see, that's again why this doesn't work that well. The normal person is not really dealing with rap sheet, but I imagine a police station probably doesn't have like the most modern printers. So
it's still 2014 though. Like true. I don't know. It's bad. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah. All right. Next, I have Russian guy not hurt by punches stereotype. Like they always have in these movies, the Russian guy that's getting like punched a bunch of times, and it doesn't seem to be doing any damage to him. And I mean, everybody that's seen movies has seen this at some point. That it's just it does either. I mean, at least they didn't lean into like he's the drunk on vodka, and now he can take all these punches because a lot of movies do that. But this is just like the general Russian guy doesn't get hurt by punches or like gunshots or anything.
Are you talking about the dude who fights?
It's the guy in the bar.
Yeah, after Danny's arm gets broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole scene, like, again, right? Like, Danny's got his arm broken and he's fighting this dude with one arm, and the dude's really just fucking with him because
the dude is just not even doesn't even have to block because he's Russian and he doesn't feel pain, and you can just punch him as much as and it doesn't matter. Yeah. Like he doesn't even get staggered.
No, that whole scene didn't really make a whole lot of sense either because like when all these people start showing up, like why did he even fire the shot?
Right? Why didn't he just wait there?
Like maybe they wouldn't have found you. Maybe there's like, is there a back door? Like he was just like drawing their attention on purpose. And I know the whole idea is he has to get captured and they have to kind of make it look like Kane and ratted him out or something like that and go take us off on this whole tangent.
My thought was that maybe he thought there would be a standoff and he would give him more time for Nic Cage's character to get there rather than them moving in immediately. But I don't know.
Maybe he just had a shotgun. Like he's by himself. There's like 6 guys with machine guns. No, they don't know that, but like they know it's only 3 guys.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I don't know. That was the best justification I had for it. And my next note is Mustang is as fast as a motorcycle because like there's this scene where Nic Cage is driving this Mustang and there's this motorcycle.
So that's the car chase I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess we were a little out of order on some of it.
No, it's just that car chase is just in my head as just like the worst part of the movie for me to watch.
It always bothers me though when like a motorcycle can't get away from a car because one, motorcycles are much more maneuverable than cars. Flat out. There's no debating that. I don't even care if it's a Harley. It's probably going to be more maneuverable than 90% of the cars on the road. But also, in general, most motorcycles are significantly faster than cars.
So I agree with you. However, I don't think the motorcyclist was he wasn't chasing the motorcyclist. He was
No, but
chasing the
like,
SUV.
so they're wait, so the motorcycle was chasing, like that's another part. This wasn't even clear.
No, it's not clear. I have no idea what the motorcyclist was doing.
Right.
But Nic Cage was chasing the SUV.
Right. And then there's this random motorcycle that's with them the whole time.
So the motorcyclist was with the SUV, but I don't know what their goal was during the car chase.
They weren't shooting at him or anything.
They weren't shooting. I kept waiting for that because they kept cutting back and forth between Cage and the motorcycle. And they're next to each other. Cage and the motorcycle. Cage and the, and I'm like, okay, are they going to like try and grab him or, pull out a gun? I'm like, I'm waiting for something to happen. It never happens.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense, but that's not who he's after. So they're not like trying to evade him. I think they're trying to distract him or make it harder for him to keep up.
Was the original John Wick the one that had the motorcycle chase scene too, or was that John Wick 2? That might have been John Wick 2.
I need to rewatch them.
Yeah, they're so good. I need to rewatch them too. This movie just makes me appreciate them that much more. But in one of the John Wick movies, they had a motorcycle and, he was on a motorcycle too. So I guess it's not the same. It was just a motorcycle and motorcycle chase scene. Oh. But yeah. My next note references one that I made earlier where I said the car explosion was the most expensive shot in the movie. There's a second car explosion, except that this one is a 1987 Crown Vic cop car.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah. That was the other thing. He kills at least one cop in that car chase.
Yeah, for sure.
But Murtaugh's like,
yeah, let him go.
Let him go.
So my next note is basically the end of the movie, so we can kind of get into that. My next note says it was the kid and an accident wasn't our worst choice for ending. So at the end of the movie, we find out
so I don't want to skip over too much though, because keep in mind, we have to remember. So Danny gets kidnapped by the Russians. He gets tortured. Chernov beats the shit out of him and kills him. Okay. McGuire, thinking Kane ratted them out, kills Kane.
Yeah, we kind of missed something, and that's that the ballistics of the gun came back to a Russian sidearm that only Russians can use,
apparently,
in this universe.
It's the name of the gun was apparently the Tokarev, which is what the movie was originally going to be called. And so so because of the ballistics report, it has to be the Russians. It can't possibly be anybody else.
This whole time the Nic Cage and his two side characters are killing the Russians and going after the Russians, and that's
the crux is that they believe, so the three of them, McGuire, Kane, and Danny, they committed this crime when they were 17, and they swore themselves to secrecy. And so this whole time they're like, well, how could someone have found out? How do they find out? How could they know? And so we're led to believe Kane ratted them out. He did some time in jail, but it wasn't like a ton of time. So how did he get off? He gave some information, right? And that's what we're led to believe. McGuire kind of flips out and slices the dude's belly open, kills him.
Yeah, there's a lot of red herrings about how he's killing all these people, and I think it was kind of meant to relate to the Julius Caesar quote that it was from Julius Caesar's life in general from when because his daughter in the beginning of the movie, they made a big point about how she was writing a paper about Julius Caesar and the die has been cast.
Yeah,
and so I think they were trying to follow that theme, but not great. But they added a bunch of red herrings as to well, this is how they found out about it. Is in Nic Cage's head, he justified that his buddy had to have ratted on him or had to have spent this money that they got and that gave him away and all this other crap.
Instead, Kane's really just kind of a putz.
An idiot that likes to have sex with strippers and treat women poorly.
He likes his drugs. He's done some crimes. He's kind of a moron, but he didn't do this.
Yeah.
So he gets killed. McGuire kills his best friend, one of his oldest friends. Danny gets killed by the Russians for no reason, since the Russians had nothing to do with it, it turns out. And then we get to the end.
Well, yeah, and at some point, Peter Stormare's character is killed by the Russians. And at that point, my theory kind of went out the window.
Yes. So after Danny explains to Chernov why they went after his people, Chernov has no fucking clue what he's talking about because they didn't do it. And so the two leaders of the mobs, right, O'Connell and Chernov, meet each other in an alley somewhere with their SUVs or whatever. And Yeah, all of Francis's people get killed, including himself.
Right.
So
So
Chernov basically like gets to expand his operation, I guess.
right. So in the end, we find out that they were playing with their dad's gun, or well, the girl when she was with the two boys, they get really drunk and they decide to do something dangerous, and so they go to their dad's room, or her dad's room, where he has this gun. I think that was part of that Russian. Yeah, it came from the
Well,
Russians that they robbed back when they were 19 or whatever.
that's the big problem here. So there's a couple of things. First, the boys know that her dad was involved in something,
Right.
which
Because they're
seems
like, oh, he scares us or whatever.
they think he's been doing some stuff, right? And that he used to be in like a mob or whatever. Somehow they know this, and so she takes him into the closet where he's got a box of guns. Like a criminal
Like
who wants to go clean would do, would be to keep guns linked directly to crimes.
And all loaded.
Look, he spends the whole movie explaining about how he's gone straight.
He's
and
a working man.
He's a working man. It's why the detective's on his side. What moron would keep those guns?
I don't have an answer for you.
And not just keep them just in a box, not a safe. There's no key. There's no combination. They're just in a box.
Wrapped
Anybody
up in
to find.
like a piece of like linen. So the kids go out and they're like playing with the guns and pretending to be badasses, and one of them shoots the girl, his daughter, and kills her. And so they drag the body like out to the creek because that's how people deal with dead bodies.
There are so many problems with just the logistics of that. So what happens is after everything goes down, McGuire, like it clicks in his head that, oh wait, I know that gun because I have that gun. And he realizes what happened, somehow pieces it all together and gets the kid to show up somewhere and threatens to shoot him. Then the kid explains the whole thing. So, okay. So they get the guns and they go outside. It's pouring rain. They're fucking around with guns in the pouring rain. And this kid shoots her right in the head in the pouring rain. They drag her body to the creek. Fine. They get back into the house. They beat the shit out of each other. They break some windows and glass and stuff like that, right? How are they not still soaking wet?
I don't know.
What, did the home invaders drag you outside and then bring you back in? That, like, what happened there? So there's already a problem with that, number one. Right? Number two, they were scared. So they just left this woman in the woods, basically, her dead body, and then lied about it to a guy they already thought was probably in the mob.
Yeah.
So
the whole thing was pretty stupid. It's basically, like I said earlier, this is basically the worst possible way they could have picked to end this movie, other than maybe like if the wife had paid for a hit on the daughter or something because she secretly didn't like her. That might have been worse. Actually, that would probably have been better than this ending.
So I actually had that thought pretty late in the movie. Like once we realized what the gun is and the fact that he used that gun came from the crime when he was 17, I was like, oh shit, it's the wife. Right. And then I was like, oh, she must be connected to somebody.
My significant other said that as well when she was watching the movie with me. She said that it's the wife. That was her guess right out of the gate. And she stuck with it through the movie. And thank God it was wrong.
I mean, not thank God, though, because it would have been a better ending than what we got.
But let me tell you what would have been the best ending. Because this is how I pictured it going down.
Okay.
Peter Stormare's character goes and has that exact same talk with Nic Cage. Except that he was the one that had one of his guys go out with this Russian gun to kill his daughter. So then he goes and Nic Cage goes and kills all these Russian mobsters. So now Peter Stormare's character has way more easy time taking over more of the like crime empire in whatever city this is. Like having that whole conspiracy, or not conspiracy, but that whole setup being the plan would have made way more sense. And been better, but yeah, that
I wasn't far off from that. I thought that Stormare's character did it, but to bring McGuire back into the game.
That could have definitely been part of it too.
Because he's retired, right? And you can't really let somebody walk away, and they in that whole conversation. And so my thought was, okay, he's trying to bring him back in. How do you do that? Well, you push the guy into,
right.
returning to the life. Um, all of that, both of those would have been better. The wife at least would have been better than what we got.
Yeah, that was literally the worst possible thing that they could have picked. And then I tried to justify it with where I think maybe what they were trying to do. I put, so ultimately it's Nic Cage's fault for keeping loaded guns in the house. Is this a bad social commentary on
If that's what they were
gun
trying to
violence?
do, it's the worst like attempt I've ever seen.
Yeah. And then my second to the last note says horrible ending.
I mean, the moral I got from the story, if you accept the ending as it is, and I do want to talk for a minute about why I hate that ending as much as I do. But if he had heeded everybody, if he had heeded the detective, if he had heeded Francis and just sat by and let the cops do their job, then you know what? Kane is still alive. Danny is still alive. Francis is still alive. And McGuire is still alive. But by the end of the movie, all of those people are dead. And it ends up really for no good reason because the whole thing was an accident. Now, why do I hate the ending so much? It is not clever storytelling to lie to the audience and then go, fooled you at the end of the movie. That's not clever. You just lied. And it's not like a character lied. Characters can lie because characters are supposed to be people. But when you show footage that didn't take place, that to me is one of the worst writing techniques that exist. It's not clever. You're not tricking anybody. You showed me a thing and it turned out that that was just a piece of false scenery.
Right.
It's not interesting. How do I piece together? Because like part of watching a movie like this is I want to help piece together what happened, right? Oh, it's that guy. Well, I wonder if that guy's connected to this thing, right? I'm trying to help figure it out as I go along with McGuire. And when you show me bullshit, then you're just wasting my time.
Yeah, it's not like a clever twist or anything like that. It's just bad.
Right. It's like I think it's Saw 4 and 5 take place at the exact same time. That's the big twist at the end of 5 is that 5 and 4 are happening at the same time. Like that's not a twist. You just lied about when the movies took place.
Right. You're just
right?
leaving out pertinent information.
Yeah, like that's not, you're not tricking anybody. You're just writing it. You're telling a story poorly on purpose.
Right. So that you can frame it as a twist later.
Right. And that just bothers me.
So my last note and the way this movie ends, well, technically the movie ends with a bunch of mobsters coming into the house and seemingly killing Nic Cage, and it shows the same eyeball shot that it had from the very beginning of the movie. They kind of tie it all together with a really bad bow.
Yep.
And then there's like this slow-mo crime scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like with cops slowly moving around the house.
During the end credits.
During the end credits that you think is going to lead to something, and it doesn't.
And it doesn't.
So they're transporting a body out, but they don't ever show that it's Nic Cage. You know, I think, at least for me, having seen a lot of movies, I was like, well, you know, maybe he fought all these guys off and like faked his own death so that he could officially be out of the game and have a fresh start. But then I thought maybe they were leading to that, but no, they didn't. They just had a body bag coming out in slow motion, and that's the end of the movie.
I mean, I guess it's vague enough that if this had been a big hit, that they could do a sequel.
I guess.
But this $15 million movie made $2.4 million at the box office, so I don't think we're going to see Rage 2 raging more.
And yeah, Raging Boner. Yeah, they probably half the people that went and saw this movie had to get refunds because they were so disappointed in how bad it was. So
that's it. That's the movie,
let's
man.
Put it on our scale.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we have our Cage scale, and in our Cage scale, we are ranking movies on two different scales. It's quality from 0 to 20, and it's caginess from 0 to 20. So Ryan, from a quality standpoint, 0 being the worst movie imaginable, 20 being the greatest thing of all time, where would you put Rage?
Probably like a 4.
Yeah, I was actually going to go lower.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking 3 or 4, but then I'm
yeah,
like, I've seen much worse movies, but it was still pretty bad.
I'm going with a 3.
Okay.
I'm going with a 3. So that gives us a 3.5 on the quality scale. Now, what about the caginess?
There was basicagely no caginess in this movie. So yeah, it's going to
Agreed.
be, I mean, I don't, do you recall any points like going, oh, that's a little cagey?
No, I don't.
Maybe a little bit when he's on the roof and he's like, don't die. And
And
like
he's like
that whole thing's
smacking the
going on.
dude's head.
Yeah. That would be about the only part that might be. I'm going to put it like a
Maybe.
2.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to give it,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah. So we're going to put it a 2 on the cage scale. So a 3.5 quality, 2 on the cage scale. Clearly our lowest by a wide margin, it turns out. So that's that one there. So yeah, that's it. So joining our Wheel O Cage. So make sure you go to comingofcage.com to find out what movie we are going to watch next when I spin the Wheel O Cage. But joining the wheel now that this movie is no longer on it, joining the wheel is Mandy.
Hey, that's an exciting one.
Yeah, so Mandy is joining the Wheel O Cage. So comingofcage.com to watch the Wheel O Cage spin and find out what movie we will be talking about next on the show. Ryan, anything else this time?
Don't watch this movie.
Don't watch this movie.
Go watch John Wick instead.
Watch John Wick instead. I agree. If for some reason you hate yourself and you want to watch this movie, it is on Tubi for free. So there you go.
With ads.
With ads. Yeah, with ads. But it was a better experience than Freevee.
A little bit, yeah.
You know. All right,
also
guys.
the sound mixing was really bad in this movie, which should give it even more points off. But
I mean, I think the rest of the movie was so bad that I didn't even like at that point. I didn't.
Yeah, that's true. That's sorry to get nitpicky based on everything else.
Right. All right. Well, that's it. That's Rage. This is the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That was Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. Comingofcage.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Bye.